Serious. Have you ever watched as someone's world fell apart in a moment? What happened? I was speaking privately in my office with one of my employees when a call came through on my office phone that there was an urgent call for the employee. I handed over my phone and managed to catch her as she crumpled moments later. Her dad, who'd been missing for 2 days, had just been found deceased. Had to tell my brother that our dad died. Mom was in the hospital and she let me know there. On the way I was crying so hard, barely held it together. When I knocked on his door, the casual "what is it?" greeted me. Dad died. Oh, I closed the door, went into my room. A few hours later I heard him cry. Broke my heart. At a small local store, a truck had reversed and hit a small 10-year-old boy who was scootering past. Ambulance and police everywhere. The boy's mom was right beside the boy and a huge crowd had gathered. The paramedic pronounced him dead after a few moments of struggling and the mom screamed. A real low, deep, pained scream that I can't forget. She got up and walked almost in slow motion, more of a limp, and headed directly towards me. Her eyes were just dead and she just walked aimlessly, and I swiftly left the scene. On the flip side, throughout this whole time, the driver of the work truck had locked himself in the car. He did not leave the car the whole time I was there. The mom tried to get into it at one point and the police were around it. The man was in it, just motionless and not responding to anything. I guess that's two worlds that fell apart in that moment. Imagine for a second hearing the paramedics confirm, "Yep, you killed this child." I mean, it would obviously be the end of the world for the mother, but people tend to forget that the person that did this, no matter how little fault they actually had, will always be the person that killed a child, for the rest of their life. I don't think I would be able to live with that knowledge. I was at a friend's parents' house, sitting with her whole family, when friend's sister gets the call that the father of her newborn baby had been crushed to death in a work accident. It was excruciating, because there was nothing I could do for her except leave. She didn't know me, and I was extraneous to her situation. Unfortunately, I was 2 hours from home without transportation, and had to sit awkwardly in their living room until someone else could pick me up. We had to tell my mother my father died. I will never forget that day. It was horrible on all of us, but her reaction was heartbreaking. They got married when they were still teenagers and had been together for 2 months shy of 30 years. It was an on-the-job accident and out of the blue. His workplace called my uncle mother's brother, dad's best friend first, and he called all of us. She was the last to find out so we could all be there for her. I was there when my friend got the news that there had been a shooting at a church a lot of his family went to. He got word it was happening, but only one person had been shot. While devastating, he had been told that no one he knew had been hurt. He then got word that the one person shot was his uncle. They got him to the hospital, but he didn't make it. My mom, when my stepdad died, she came through the door and the only way I could describe how she sounded was a high-pitched squealing cry. I felt so bad. He was so good to her and she has been through a lot. My godmother, when her abusive husband shot their 7-year-old daughter and 1-year-old son, nearly killed her parents and then committed. My grandparents were married for 60 years. I saw a lot of people break completely the day my grandfather passed away. My father and both of his brothers, but the most of them all was my grandmother. After a few hours spending time saying goodbye to him as we waited for the mortuary to take him to the funeral home, everyone was saying their final goodbyes to him on the stretcher. My grandma tends to be very calm, cool and collected about her feelings, and I had never seen her cry up until that day. She began to sob over him and say, "I'll see you soon, honey. I'll see you soon." I still get choked up remembering it. Woke up early in the morning to get ready for school when I heard the most strange inhumane noise coming outside my room. I walk out and it's dark, but I make out my mom sitting at the dining table with my dad standing over her. The sound was my mom crying. I'd never seen her cry. It was the sound of a heart breaking. The police had called at 4 a.m. to tell my parents my brother was found dead. I used to work for a cruise line as a host. Translations are a part of the gig. During a cruise going from Rio de Janeiro to Buenos Aires, a lot of Brazilians seemed excited to gamble at the casino. Second day in, the casino host calls me up to translate for a guest. Once I'm there, I see his guy red as a beet. Turns out he didn't understand the concept of international waters and brought all his savings on board to gamble. He thought he had found a loophole, that he could do it, and if he lost he'd just sue the company for gambling in Brazilian territory, which seems like it's illegal, and get his money back plus a bonus because movies. After a lengthy explanation on international waters and how casinos work, he broke down, began crying and begging us to give him some money back. That it was all he had from over 20 years of savings for when he got old, around 200k give or take with the currency exchange. He said his wife would leave him and take his daughters if she found out he gambled it all away in a single night. Over the period of a 7 days cruise, he'd come to me and repeat the same scene every single day, ranging from crying and begging for at least a small refund to angrily threatening to himself by jumping from the back of the ship, making sure I knew it would be my fault alone. Last day came in, I was told by the security office that his wife left him alone at the terminal and he was wailing there. It was a sad week all around. I will never forget the pain in my aunt when she was told that her daughter, 28 at the time, had passed away in her sleep in another province. She had a hole in her heart that took her. The air went cold. You could hear for miles in the moment it took for the news to sink in. And the wailing. It hurt so bad she literally was saying ow while bawling. The way actors portray moments like these isn't even 1/10 close to the way she was. It felt like that hole in my cousin's heart was a black hole swallowing up the both of them. I was close to my cousin, and every now and then my aunt will call me up and ask me to tell her stories of me and her daughter, crying the whole time. I was shopping at my local supermarket one night. It was the freezer section and the only other person in the aisle was a man, probably 30 to 40. Answering his phone, he immediately collapsed to the floor crying. I honestly don't know what happened, but he managed to pull himself up and rush out of the store. I was doing a job at a jail. A guy came in for a weekend detention and forgot about the baggie of white powder in his hat. He went from a low-level first-time offender to a felon in about a second, introducing a controlled substance in a correctional facility. It was basically an open and shut case, and he had this look of utter sadness and fear. This was juxtaposed with the funniest thing I've ever seen, which was a guy with SS bolts and a Confederate flag tattoo standing next to a Hispanic guy with Mexican gang tattoos, both rubbing elbows, pointing, and laughing at the poor kid while shouting, "Those aren't my pants." In the span of 20 minutes my best friend saw me get the news that my mum had terminal cancer, then phone my partner to give her the news, only to be told that she wasn't actually on a work retreat thing, she was her boss. Apparently I physically shrank. My mum died last week, and I'm not sure my head will ever be right. Betrayal is a It happened to me. I was in my first assignment as a sales rep on an expo. I was totally freaking out because I was alone and trying to represent the brand and looking for partners. And then my sister called. My mom and her were leaving the hospital. Mom was diagnosed breast cancer. It was very aggressive and they had to do a mastectomy by the end of the month. Otherwise chances were very slim she would hold a year. That hit me like a ton of bricks. Next thing I remember is driving back to the hotel and being stopped by a policeman because I ignored a red light. I have no idea what he saw or how bad I looked, but he asked me some questions, understood what was happening and escorted me to the hotel. I barely remember the next couple days after all the phone calls with my mom and family. Of course, nowadays all of it seems silly. She got the surgery and took it like a champ, did all the chemotherapy and survived. I married and got a daughter, and all these years have been a blessing to have her around. Life is full of surprises. My sister died 3 years ago. When she was in her casket, I watched my dad and other sister holding it. Because my sister was inside, my sister's boyfriend comes, picks her up, and keeps her away from the casket for some time. So I went to pick up my dad, take him away so he wouldn't be so depressed. I have never felt so adult since. My dad hugs me, and I realized how little and old he was, and skinny. I felt like an adult trying to take care of a child. When she was taken away to be buried, my dad snaps and tries to hold to that wooden thing, like his life depends on it. Once again I have to hug him, and listen to him saying, "My little daughter, my baby is dead." It was horrible and I never wished to someone to live a similar situation. My mother's face the moment she realized that we had taken her to a psychiatric clinic and was going to stay.